I wrote a book a few years ago called You'll See It When You Believe It, and there's an entire chapter in there called Detachment. And one of the things that Maslow said and taught us is that self-actualizing people are living their life detached from outcome. Detached from outcome. And detached from outcome means that I don't do what I do because of what might show up for me. I'm not motivated by being famous. I'm not motivated by making money. I'm not motivated by other people's approval. I'm motivated by doing what I love and loving what I do, which I'll be talking about in the second principle. And it's the process of doing it and living it and loving it that appeals the most. And it's very difficult in a world which says that you are what you have, and you are what you do, and you are your accomplishments and your achievements and your acquisitions. When you begin to evaluate yourself on the basis of all of these kinds of things, then attracting those kinds of things becomes the almost paramount motivator of our lives. But to shift away from that, to understand what Thoreau wrote about back there in Concord, Massachusetts, at Walden Pond, when he defined success as advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavoring to live the life which you have imagined, then you will meet with a success, unexpected in common hours. And it's one of the most difficult things in Western civilization to get people to understand is that doing what you love and loving what you do is its own reward, and that whatever the universe provides for you in the way of outcome is what you accept. It's fine. So that what you are motivated by is a sense of peace and fulfillment and awareness that I'm doing what I love and loving what I do. And one of the places where attachment shows up most profoundly is in our relationships. That we begin to believe that who we are and our happiness is based upon another person or my family. And there's a wonderful writer who passed away a few years back. His name was Anthony DeMello. He said, the source of all unhappiness in the world is attachment. That if you could learn to detach, and I recommend that you read, You'll See It When You Believe It, that chapter on detachment, because it sort of wrote itself through me. And I have to work at practicing it all the time, having as many children as I have, to understand that I am not the source of their happiness and that they are not the source of mine. And sometimes it sounds almost callous, but this is what he suggests in The Way to Love that'll help you to experience love in a non-attached way. How do you love someone and not be attached to them? And attachment means that I become immobilized if I don't get what it is that I'm seeking. Attachment doesn't mean that I'm not attracted to you, that I don't love you, that I'm not happy with you, that I don't love things. Detachment is about understanding that if what you would like to have from another person is not available, then you don't become immobilized. And he says here are two tests. First, can you say this to other people in a detached way? I am not really attached to you at all. I am merely deluding myself into the belief that without you, I will not be happy. Can you be in a relationship with anyone, including your own children and family, and be able to say to them that I am deluding myself into the belief that without you, I will not be happy? And the second is, this is the toughest one, I think, of all. One that I've met very few people who are in relationships, love relationships, spousal relationships, and so on, who can pass this test. Be able to say to the person you love, I leave you free to be yourself, to think your thoughts, indulge your tastes, follow your inclinations, and behave in ways that you decide are to your liking. You have that freedom, and you have my love in the process. It's a great test, one that I have failed on many occasions in my life, but I'm working on. I haven't failed it so much with my children. Somehow I think the advantage I had in growing up in the way that I did in a series of foster homes until I was almost 10, and being required to go out and earn my way in life, not having someone hand it to me, somehow that gave me the ability to allow my children to be what they needed to be, because I don't think I'd be where I am in my life had someone else handed it to me. And I must say it's one of the great conflicts I've always experienced with my children, is how much do I give of the wonderful abundance that has showed up in my life, and how much do I withhold and allow them to create it for themselves. And I have found that most of the time when I give too much and take over for them and do it for them, that not only do they fall, but I find myself suffering more as well. And that when I allow them to figure out a way to create it for themselves, even if they get a little bit upset about it, that generally speaking, they're more at peace, and so am I. Please, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be back on public television. It's now 10 years we've been creating public television programs. It's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. I obviously support public television. It's a way to bring higher consciousness to our entire country, and I'm proud and pleased to be here. This is a program about changing your life. Not in the traditional way that we think of when we think about changing our lives. Usually that means changing your behaviors, retraining yourself, getting new habits, going out and trying them out and changing your life. This is about changing your thoughts, and then your life will change. Change your thoughts, change your life. It's the name of this program, it's the name of the book. It is something that I very, very strongly endorse, that we have within us the ability and the capacity, through the way that we use our minds and the way that we process things and events, to make our lives totally shift and change around. And I can tell you that it doesn't make any difference what age you are, whether you're a teenager watching this, or whether you're someone in your 60s, 70s, 80s, or anywhere along the way, you can make that change. And I'll tell you, it happened for me. 2 years ago, on the 10th of May, I turned 65. And the next day, on the 11th of May, I had a life-changing thing take place for me. I changed the way that I was thinking about who I am, about what kind of a man I am, about what kind of a person I intend to be for the rest of my life and where I'm going. And something began to resonate with me that I had to make a shift and make a change at the age of 65. I had a wonderful office, which was really a townhouse. It was filled with over 20,000 books. It was filled with clothing. It was filled with records of all kinds. It had pictures on the wall. I had awards that I had received over the years, and everything that I had accumulated, literally, in this physical world, had accumulated in that office. I turned the key and handed it to my manager, Maya, who's been with me for almost 30 years, and I said, I would like you to sell everything or distribute everything that's in there. Sell the townhouse, get rid of it. Take all the records, all the books. I got rid of my shoes. And I left it all behind and turned it over to her to get rid of everything. I detached myself from a lifetime of accumulations, and I moved full-time to a place over in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on one of our great islands called Maui. And in the next months, I began to get a lot of things coming to me about what my life was to unfold, things that I wasn't even expecting. And I think about this idea about what age you are, and whether or not changes and shifts can be made, and how difficult so many people attribute this to. They say that's an impossibility. I couldn't possibly do that. I'm so attached to all of these things, or I'm too old. I've been living in the same place too long. Whatever it might be. Right here in this audience is one of the women that I revere. I think more than any other woman I can think of in the professional world. At the age of 60, she changed her thoughts, and her life changed dramatically. She started a publishing company called Hay House, which is one of the world's largest publishers of spiritual and higher consciousness materials. She wrote a book called You Can Heal Your Life. She's here today. Her name is Louise Hay. Louise, would you stand up and be acknowledged? Thank you for that. Louise, with a great number of people from all over the world, just celebrated her 80th birthday. So, I should look so good even at 60, all right? And I'm just so deeply honored that you're here, dear. Thank you. What happened for me in the next few months was absolutely life-changing. I had a friend tell me who was severely addicted to all kinds of drugs and alcohol, who was basically very close to death. He refused all kinds of treatment. He wouldn't go through the programs and so on. But he read a book, and the book was called The Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching. T-A-O-T-E-C-H-I-N-G. Tao Te Ching. Tao in ancient Chinese means the way, the great way. Te is the term that means the application of or the virtue of. And Qing in ancient Chinese means book. So it's the book for applying the virtue of living the way. That's what this book means. And he told me that, and I thought, I've heard of the Tao Te Ching. I've heard of Taoism. I'm familiar with that. I had read about it when I was in college. I'd even lectured a little bit about it when I was teaching at a university in New York City, at St. John's University. It was something that I had sort of a cursory awareness of. But it wasn't something that I was really profoundly interested in. I was watching a TV show one night, and someone talked about the Tao on there. I walk into a bookstore, and there's a copy of the Tao. This is all happening in the 6 months or so that between when I had left, and knowing that it was time for me to detach myself from all of the things that had been so much a part of my life and move on into a new area of my life. So I couldn't resist it any longer, and I said, I really want to read the Tao, and I'm going to take the next year, a full year. And in that year, what I would like to do is I would like to read each verse. There are 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching. You can read it in an afternoon, but you can study it for a lifetime. And in the studying of this, I said I would like to just take those 365 days for the next year, and in every 4 days, I am going to read one verse. Some of them are only 4 lines long. Some of them are 12, 16 lines long. I'm going to create for myself a way of seeing if I can live this Tao. And what I did was I would read it, then I would meditate on it, I would walk on it, I would go swim on it. When I would do yoga, I would practice it, and then I would sit down after the 4th day, and I had a picture of the man who was considered to be the author of this, although there's no historical actual record of his name is Lao Tzu. This is the visage that I looked at. This is the image of an artist's drawing of Lao Tzu. In ancient Chinese means old man. Old man. He was the old man who was living in China in the time of the warring states, and he decided he didn't want any more to do with war and violence and hatred and killing and all of the things that were so much a part of his world. And he got on his oxen and he left, and before he left to go off and be by himself, he dictated some 5,000 Chinese characters, these 81 verses that became the Tao Te Ching. There are some people who call the Tao Te Ching the wisest book ever written. If you Google this thing called the Tao Te Ching, you'll come up with over 1,300,000 hits on the Tao Te Ching. Not only that, there are 14,000 translations of the Tao Te Ching that I have come across. So what I did is I took 10 of those translations, the ones that seem to be the most relevant, the ones that seem to have the most meaning to those people who lived in this part of the Western world, and I combined them into what I consider to be the most useful translation of the Tao Te Ching. And each morning I would get up and I would look at this picture and I would ask, what is it that you would say to the people who are living now at this time, given the conditions that we have in our life right here? What is it that you would do? Many people call this a manual for achieving a way of life that literally guarantees integrity, joy, peace, and balance in our life. Now, there was a man who was a contemporary of Lao Tzu. His name was Confucius. He was many years younger than Lao Tzu, but he kept hearing about this old man who had all of this great wisdom. And one day, he decided that he was going to go, legend says, and visit Lao Tzu. And he spent a full day listening to this man, because Confucius was someone in China who was trying to lay down all the rules of etiquette and how to conduct yourself and trying to dictate to the people what they should be. Lao Tzu had nothing to do with any of that. And when he went to see Lao Tzu, he came back and he talked to all of his people. And this is what he said. He said, "Of birds, I know they have wings to fly with. Of fish, that they have fins to swim with. Of wild beasts, that they have feet to run with. For feet, there are traps. For fins, there are nets. For wings, arrows. But who knows how dragons surmount wind and cloud into heaven? This day I have seen Lao Tzu, and he is a dragon." And there he is, a dragon. And a dragon in ancient Chinese was a picture of someone or something that was so mysterious and so difficult to comprehend, because it could always be something else. There was a great teacher who came many years after that. His name was Rumi, who was Jalaluddin Rumi, who was a great poet, a Persian poet in the 14th century. And he had a line. He said, "The day that you were born, a ladder was set up to help you to escape from this world." I believe that the Tao Te Ching and this thing that I have done, this Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life effort that I spent 1 full year on every single day, doing exactly what I just said, is a ladder that will help you to return. In the Tao, there's a very famous line. The 40th verse of the Tao says, "Returning is the motion of the Tao." Returning is the motion of the Tao. So that all of us came from a divine spiritual essence, invisible. Everything in the world of form emanated from something that is formless. There was a split second when you went from non-being to being. And what Lao Tzu was trying to teach was to be able to return to that place from which you came and live your life from the spiritual perspective and become a God-realized being. Another great poet, T.S. Eliot, once said, "We shall not cease from exploration. And at the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time." For the first time. What I'm asking you to do, and what Lao Tzu seemed to be saying, was learn to die while you're alive, because you will ultimately return. All of us have a return trip, a round trip ticket when we came in, didn't we? But if you could learn to die while you're alive, and there's a great story,
I have to tell you this story. I want to read this story to you. It's a way to look at this idea of dying while you're alive. It goes like this. To die while we are alive gives us the only opportunity we will ever have to get outside of this package that houses us temporarily. There's an ancient parable that repeated generation after generation by the spiritual masters of India, which illustrates this point. Listen to this wonderful story. A traveler from India went to Africa to acquire some local products and animals, and while in the jungle, he saw thousands of beautiful, multicolored talking parrots. He decided to capture a talking parrot and take it back as his pet. At home, he kept his parrot in a cage, and he fed him, and he gave him wonderful seeds and honey, and played music for his pet, and generally, he treated him very well. When it was time for the man to return to Africa 2 years later, he asked his parrot if there was any message that he could deliver to the parrot's friends who were back in the jungle. Well, the parrot told his master to say that he was very happy in his cage and that he was enjoying each day and to convey his love. Well, when the traveler arrived back in Africa, he delivered the message to the parrots back in the jungle. Just as he finished his story, a parrot with tears welling up in his eyes fell over dead. The man was alarmed, and he decided that the parrot must have been very close to the parrot in the cage, and that this was probably the reason for the sadness and for his demise. When the traveler returned to India, he told his pet what had happened. As he finished his story, the pet parrot's eyes welled up with tears, and he kneeled over dead in his cage. The man was astounded, but he figured that his pet died from the despair of hearing of the death of his close friend back in the jungle. The trader opened up the cage and tossed the dead bird outside onto the trash heap. Immediately, the pet parrot flew up to a branch on the tree outside. The trader said to him, "So you're not dead after all. Why did you do that? You tricked me." And the parrot responded, "Because that bird back in Africa sent me a very important message." What was the message? The trader wanted to know. He told me that if you want to escape from your cage, you must die while you're alive. We must indeed die while we are alive in order to be able to look back at our waking consciousness and see ourselves trapped in our cage, which in our case is our body. And then we will see how unnecessary it is to remain caged. Isn't that a great story? I love that story. Yeah, you can applaud. What I encourage you to do is to create for yourself a sacred space. And in this sacred space, I would like you to place everything that has energy value to you. Photographs. I have this photograph that I looked at every day for 1 year and began to talk to after a while. It's a little weird, but you begin to get this idea. And those of you who wonder why I am wearing no shoes, I'd like you to know that where I live, you never walk into a sacred space with your shoes on. It would be considered dishonorable to do so. And to me, this stage, this setting, this beautiful place, and this beautiful symbol is a sacred, sacred space. I live without shoes. I heard it said once that if you wear shoes everywhere you go, the whole earth will feel like leather. And it's nice to feel what the earth feels like and to feel that naturalness. So in that sacred space, you will feel the energy of the photographs, of any mementos that you have, of pictures of your children, of drawings, of statues, of anything at all that you can think of. I have a beautiful sacred space, and it calls me. And as it calls me, when I go into that place that is so profoundly sacred to me, the most beautiful things begin to happen for me, particularly in the middle of the night when no one else is up, and I feel closest to God, and I feel closest to this beautiful old man who sent so many important messages to me through his Tao Te Ching and in my meditations to help me to create this program, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao. What I would like to do now is to look at some of the key thoughts that I would like you to think about and consider changing as you become a person who becomes more God-realized. That is, someone who has died but stayed alive and returned and went back on that return trip. The first of these thoughts to change is to change the idea that I can't trust in my own nature. 2, I trust in my own nature. Did it ever occur to you that you have a nature? That nature is so profound and is always calling you. You know it. No one else can know it. No one else can impose it on you. No one else can tell you what it is that you feel in here that you know is why you're here and what you're doing here. There's no one else can explain that or explore that with you. You can't share it. Everything in the universe has a nature. Your dog has a nature. A crocodile has a nature. A duck has a nature. A crow has a nature. Everything has its nature. Everything has a dharma, including you. But what we've learned and we've grown up to believe is that I can't trust in that nature. My nature, to trust in your nature, to know that you came from a divine place of well-being and to trust in it. Listen to this, verse 38 of the Tao, a few lines. The great master follows his own nature and not the trappings of life. A truly good man is not aware of his goodness and is therefore good. Think about yourself. The first moment of life, the very first moment, that speck when you went from nowhere, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, to now here, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, from nowhere to now here. Same thing, just a little question of spacing, just a little different spacing, all right? So you went from nowhere, now you're in now here, and where do you think you're going? Nowhere. Right? Back to nowhere. Who out there watching, who in this audience isn't going back to nowhere? That's where we're all headed, back to nowhere. So in that split second, then you lived inside your mother's womb for 9 months. And in that 9-month period of time, you trusted your nature. You didn't have a sonogram and say, oh my God, I don't have a nose. This is very scary. What if it doesn't show up on time? Or you didn't do any of that. You trusted completely in your own nature, right? And so did your mother. There's very little that you can do because what you were to become, everything that this physical body needed, was all handled in there. And also, beyond what was needed for your physical world and what Lao Tzu called the world of the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things. There's 10 zillion things, obviously, in the physical world, but that's how he named it, the world of the 10,000 things. And in that world of the 10,000 things, everything returns back to its source. But while you're in that place, and why wouldn't you believe, even maybe for a second, that not only was my physiology all handled for me, but everything else that I needed, if I could just stop interfering with it and stop other people from doing it, that everything I needed. And that's a big part of understanding change your thoughts, change your life. It's a big part of that. The idea that I have a nature that I can trust, not something that I have to be afraid of, and I can stop letting other people interfere with it as well. So what happens? We go through those 9 months, totally uninterrupted. We have no questions. Everything works out. And then what? We say the very first thing, we pop out after 9 months, we'll take over from here. That was good work. Nice work, God. Thank you very much. And so what we'll do is just sort of edge you out of here, you know. So we edge God out. We take on an ego, E-G-O. And we edge out and we say, we'll take over. And we have an ego, and this ego, what this ego does is it takes on a set of beliefs. And these beliefs are that I am what I have, that I am what I do, that I am what other people think of me. So we're raised to believe that the more stuff I accumulate, the more things that I get, this is who I am. The more that people like me, this is what I'll get, and on it goes. I want to tell you a story. It's a story of one of my children. Her name is Tracy. We lived in Detroit when she was born. She came in as a little rebellious. She came in the middle of the Detroit riots when they said nobody is allowed to go out. Anybody that goes out is going to be arrested. And she said, this would be a good time for me to show up. Which is exactly what she did. So when she showed up, after about the second or third year, Tracy went to preschool. And she came home from preschool. She was about 3. And in that time she came home and she said, she handed me a paper, and it had a gold star at the top of the paper. And I looked at it and I said, and she said, Daddy, I got a gold star, I said, I'm not really interested in gold stars. I said, but what are you doing? What is this? What? She said, well, we did something in school called adding, and I got them all right, and I know how to. I said, adding? I can't believe, you're 3. You can't learn to add when you're 3. And I went through this whole long thing about adding and how terrific it was, and she kept saying, Daddy, the gold star, excuse me, but I was the only one in the class that got a gold star. I got them all right. I said, you know, Tracy, I said, honey, I said, some people just need to have gold stars, and teachers sort of like to give it out and make that the reason why you're doing something, I said, and set you apart from everybody else. I said, but your dad doesn't really care much about that and how you stack up with others, and they're going to be, I'm more interested in what you're learning. And she said, okay, she was used to that. She had a weird daddy, and she knew that. So about another month or so, she came home with a paper that had looked like it had a gold star on it, but it had obviously been taken off. Her little thumbprints were all over, but there was a place there had been a gold star. It was taken off. And I said, what's this? Oh, she said, we're now doing subtraction. And I said, subtraction? That's amazing. And I took over by her dresser. I said, you know that money you got in your piggy bank? I put it in my pocket. I said, that's called subtraction. Isn't that great? And she said, give me that money back. And we talked about subtraction. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I said, honey, what happened? What was this? What was here at the paper? And she said, that. She said, the teacher gave me one of those gold stars. I said, really? I said, well, what happened to it? Oh, she said, I took it off. I said, well, what'd you do with it? She said, I gave it back to her. I said, well, what did you tell her? She said, oh, I told her to give it to someone who needs that sort of thing. True story. Yeah. And there she is. She's standing right here. She's going to be 40 this year, my daughter Tracy. So what we have to do is learn how to take this ego of ours, this part of us that believes that who we are is what we have and what we do and what other people think of us. But remember, if you grow up believing that you are what you do, then when you don't, you aren't. And if you believe that you are what you have, when it's gone, you aren't. And if you believe that you are what other people think of you, your reputation, which we raise people to believe, I have to be concerned with what other people think of me. Take this ego and retrain it. And one of the ways that you do to retrain it is, first, you take this idea that the ego has of fear. What are you afraid of? Anybody out there, what are you afraid of? Shift from fear to curiosity. Become curious about what you're afraid of. That's what Lao Tzu taught me. Become curious about what you're afraid of. You're afraid of flying? Get curious about that. Get interested in that. You're afraid of snakes, you're afraid of disapproval, you're afraid. Just shift from fear and say, I'm going to become more curious about what I'm afraid of. And then take all of the things that you're attached to, like all of your photographs, like all of your furniture, like all of your clothing, like all of the stuff that you find so much attachment to, and start letting it go. Mm-hmm. Start letting it go. You know, the day that I turned that key on May the 11th in 2006, I didn't even know where it was going. I just knew there was a shift taking place. I felt freer than I'd ever felt, I think, in my life. In my mid-60s, out there on a whole new adventure. And here we are talking about it on national television, on PBS. Take that idea that you have to be attached to things and know that you came in with nothing, with no thing. And you're going to leave with nothing, with no thing. And understand that your life is a parenthesis in eternity. Live there without attachments. And then take your need to be in control of yourself, of others, of the situation, and shift from control to trust. Begin to have a trust. Lao Tzu is profound about this. In each one of the 81 verses, it comes up about 60 times as you look at letting go and letting God, allowing yourself to trust in your nature, allowing yourself to no longer believe that everything has to be controlled by me, and that other people no longer have to be in control of me as well. Begin to trust. Just like you did for the first 9 months. You trusted. Your nose showed up. Your height showed up. Your eyes showed up. Whatever. It all showed up. It's all perfect. It's all divine. So why not wander through your life and have this wonderful, peaceful knowing that it's all fine? And finally, shift from your sense of entitlement. Nobody can treat me that way. I'm entitled to have this. Well, I paid for that. I let go. That in 1 year, I let go of all of my entitlements. I don't feel I'm entitled to anything. I'm just here. Shift from entitlements to radical humility. Lao Tzu speaks about it so often. Stay humble. Stay low. The greatest leaders are the ones who do the least. The ones who stay back and just model and allow. And at the end of the day, in one of the verses of the Tao, it says, the people will say, we did it ourselves. We did it ourselves. In verse 49 of the Tao Te Ching, here's an exact quote. The sage is kind to the kind and kind to the unkind because the nature of his being is kindness. And also, be wise and help all beings impartially, abandoning none. You know what I do? Just before I did this program, I have to admit I was nervous. I was humbled by it. Like who are you, Wayne Dyer? Who are you to read the Tao and believe that you can interpret it on television and interpret it in a book and spend a year and say, I got real humble with that. And you know what I say? Tao, which is just another word for God, or Source, or Krishna, or Allah, or whatever you want to call it, guide me. Guide me now. I have that awareness before I come out. If you knew, it says in the Course in Miracles, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. I remember Mother Teresa saying to a dear friend of mine who was asking what could he do? What could he do to do something for her? His name was Pat McMahon. He was on KTR radio in Phoenix. And finally Mother Teresa said to him, you can do something for me. She said, tomorrow morning, get up at 4 a.m. and go out onto the streets of Phoenix and find someone who's living there who believes that he's alone and convince him that he's not. That's what you can do. That's how saints talk. That's how Lao Tzu spoke. Okay, let's go on to the next thought. To change. So you're changing from not trusting in your nature to trusting in your nature. You change your thought from I need more to what I call living contentment. What is this thing about more? It's the mantra of the ego, isn't it? I have to have more. I have to collect more stuff. I have to have more friends. I have to have more money. It's more, 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 more. When where you came from nowhere. You don't need anything. It's a continuous bombardment that we are all exposed to in this whole world of believing that we have to have more. It's one of the reasons why I love public television so much. You don't see ads on PBS. You don't have to be constantly exposed to the idea that you have to have more and you have to get more, and if you don't have this, then you're not complete, and so on. So we get bombarded with this idea of attracting more. And Lao Tzu says, live contentment. Live in a state of being contented. Here's verse 81, the last verse of the Tao Te Ching. My favorite translation of it, and I put it right into the book. Sages do not accumulate anything, but give everything to others, having more, the more they give. It's a great lesson. My son Sands, who's, we're very, very close. We just spent a couple of months together over in Maui, just being together, just being. It was a divine time. And he came home with, it was last summer, he came home with 4 T-shirts that he loved. And I said, well, honey, I said, which one do you like the best? He said, well, that one over there, that blue one, it's got the writing, and it's got the drawing, and it's got a surfer, and it's got, I said, that's great. I said, I'd like to have that one. He said, no, Dad, that's my favorite. That's the one I like the best. I said, I know. I said, that's the one. Would you mind if I had that one? He said, I would mind a lot if you had that one. He said, maybe you can have one. I'm not so crazy about this one over here. I said, so you're going to give me something you don't like? I said, that's the one. I love that because we have the same taste. Could I have that one? He said, Dad, you're crazy. He said, you can't have my favorite T-shirt. I said, well, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about detaching and letting go and not needing to have more. And he's heard me talk about this stuff his entire life. So finally, he just, I went in and I tried it on and I said, this thing looks so great. Looking in the mirror, he said, Dad, that really is mine. I said, yeah. I said, but you're going to give it to me. He said, no. I said, yeah, well, just think about it, because I'm your dad, and I'd really like to have this. And so he reluctantly parted with it. And so that evening, I was still wearing the shirt, and he looked at me and he said, oh, that's my shirt. I said, Sands, I said, you gave me the shirt. I said, I'm going to wear this shirt until you are happy that I have your favorite shirt. I'm never going to take it off until you are happy. He said, well, you'll be wearing that shirt a long time. I said, well, that's okay. So I wore it the next day. I got up. I slept in it that night. I got up I did. I got up the next morning. I put it on, and that Sands would come in and he'd look at me. I said, oh, you're still not happy that you gave me something that you really love, because this is what it really means to be a sage. This is what it means to be a divine being, to be someone who's willing to depart with not the things they don't like, but what they do like. I wore it the next day. I wore it the next day. I wore it for 2 weeks. Take it off only to wash it, put it right back on. 2 solid weeks. Each one of my children will tell you. Finally, one day he said, Dad, I'm so happy. I am so thrilled that you have that T-shirt. I said, oh, that's great. I can finally take this thing off. I'm going to just give it away. But it's like, what a great lesson in that. The idea that you take, there's a rule. It's called the 80-20 rule. And in the 80-20 rule, it says everything that you have, all of your stuff, 20% of it is what you use. All of your clothes in your closet, 20%. You just keep using the same 20% over and over. 80% of the clothing that you have in your closet for so many people is something that you never use. You don't wear. You look at it, you store it, you think, well, there might come a day, I can't part with that, even though you've been carting it around. Every time you move it and you put it. Take the 80% that you don't use, says Lao Tzu, and give it away. Give it away. Lao Tzu said that when your cup is full, stop pouring. When your cup is full, stop pouring. We have an obesity crisis in the United States, in the Western world. The obesity crisis can be handled if you just read the Tao. If you realize, in verse 33, it says, if you realize you have enough, you are truly rich. If you could just learn something called portion control, where you just take a bite and you say, is my cup full? Stop pouring. Stop pouring. In other words, instead of filling yourself with that which is already a surplus, in the Tao it teaches us to take surpluses and to reduce them, and to take deficiencies and increase them, so that we create balance in our lives, to be in balance. You can take the jewelry that you don't use. You can take the clothing and then once you've given away the 80% that you don't use, take one of the things that you really like and practice giving that away. It's such a wonderful way. Listen to this poem. It was written by a great Persian poet named Hafiz. It says, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Just look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. It lights up the whole sky. There's no owing. There's no owing. You don't have to be, you can practice living a state of contentment. This was so powerful for me. You just can't imagine how good it felt for one entire year to walk through every day and say, I'm content. I'm content. I start out every morning of my life. The first words, Hafiz says, if there's only one prayer that you say every day, make it thank you. Just say thank you. That's how I start. Wake up, thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you, Source. Thank you, Tao. Whatever you want to call. The opening line of the Tao says, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. As soon as you put a name on it, it dissolves. There's no name for it. It's just endlessly, invisibly, constantly in a state of creating out of a state of love. The next thought that the Tao teaches us to change. Change your thoughts. Change your life. You really do. See, so much of the previous PBS specials that I've done on inspiration and intention, these were teaching people generically how to think differently. What Lao Tzu taught me was what to specifically think in place of thinking that. Instead of thinking that I don't trust my nature, he said, trust your nature. Instead of saying, I need more, he said, you need less. More is less. That comes right out of the Tao. Next thought. Move from thinking in a rigid way to thinking and being flexible, soft, and allowing. From rigidity to softness. What a wonderful transformation that is. I was standing looking at, with my son Sans, and we were on Maui, and we were looking at water. As water was going against some rocks and some cliffs and so on. And in these pictures, in this moment, I said to my son, I said, which do you think is stronger? The water or the cliff? The water or the rocks? Which one do you think is more powerful and stronger? And he said, well, he said the rocks, obviously they're stronger and they're bigger and all. I said, water is very, very patient, isn't it? How much chance do those rocks have if they want to survive? I mean, what chance do they have? That would, and Lao Tzu is speaking to us about understanding our nature by examining how nature works and then making it apply to our thoughts. So that a soft thought, a thought that isn't a rigid thought, a thought that doesn't say you have to be this way or you have to be that way, a thought that is not stiff, a thought that water, there are so many references to water and what we can learn from water. You're 75% water. The planet is 75% water. We are water. The rest of us is just muscled water. It's all water. And water is soft. Water can enter anywhere. You get into a conflict with somebody else and you picture yourself as water. You can enter with water in any place that there's an opening. If you can visualize yourself as a being who moves into the space of water, if you can see yourself that way, you can just enter into those places in the people that you love, in your children, in your spouse, in anyone at all, and enter there softly. Here's verse 8. The supreme good is water, which nourishes all things without trying to. And verse 78, right smack out of the Tao. Nothing in the world is softer and weaker than water. But for attacking the hard, the unyielding, nothing can surpass it. There is nothing like it. Here it is. I asked when they designed this set, this beautiful set, and thank you designers for this, I asked if I could have water on the stage. They did it. They figured it out. There's Now, I'm going to try to get some of this water, okay? So you get down here and you just, I'm going to just scoop this up. Okay, now tighter you hold it, the less chance you have of doing anything with it, isn't it? How can I experience water? The way to experience water is to just get soft. Just get unbending. And there it is. That's what water is. The minute I grasp it, the minute I try. And Lao Tzu is saying the same thing is true in everything in your life. The more you grasp, the more you try to hold on to it, the more you try to be rigid with it, the less control you have of it. The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish. And this is a great way to practice in parenting as well. And this idea that a rigid thought, how many times have you heard this idea that if I tell you something, I'm going to stay consistent with it. We have a set of rules, these are the rules, and we'll do it this way. In the Tao it says the more rules you make, the more rule breakers you create. It's true. The more rules you have in your house about how everything has to go. We had in our house, my wife would have a big jar of M&Ms. Peanuts, all these different multicolored ones. And the kids in our house, because we didn't feed them sugar and we didn't give them sodas and stuff like that. So they were just more like a decoration. Every once in a while someone would take them. They'd hardly ever be replaced. Now when we had kids come over to our house who weren't ever allowed to have such horrible things, you should have seen their behavior. They would scoop them up, they'd be putting them in their pockets, and they'd get their purses, and they'd open it up, and, the whole thing would be empty. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you mean you could just have these whenever you want them? I said, well, we don't really have any rules about that. It's just, it's not something that we encourage or discourage. It's just there. It's like Emerson had a wonderful line. He said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. A foolish consistency, a rigid consistency. So that there are many people who will say, if I say it on Monday, you can be absolutely certain that on Wednesday, I'm going to believe the same thing, regardless of what might happen on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday might have something real that you might want to be changing your mind. You might want to say, I thought that this time, but now I've seen this, and now we can shift. And you can see how this can become and so much about the Tao is on leadership. Leadership in the family, leadership in the community, leadership geopolitically. Less rigidity, more openness, more willingness to listen and say, I changed my mind. Because a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And what I believed on Wednesday has changed because of what happened on Tuesday. Now, another important thing to say to your children, to your friends, to your lover, to your spouses, to whomever, to the people you work with, words that we're so terrified to say, but which give us a sense of living with the Tao. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up. Say it. I don't know. Doesn't hurt. Say it again. I don't know. Isn't it fearful? I mean, so many people, and it's like very freeing, because my kids ask me something, and I say, I don't know. They say, Dad, you know everything. You know everything. I said, well, I don't know that, and I'll look it up, or we'll try to find an answer to that, but I don't quite know. I know that I spent 20 years running, and I ran every day for 20 years, for 22 years, without missing a day. 8 miles. Never missed a day. That's rigid, all right? Some call that obsessive. But you brush your teeth every day, I used to say, and you don't call that obsessive. And you go to the bathroom every day, and you don't say, well, he's obsessively doing that again today. You don't do that. But anyway, what I learned is that even in the world of exercise, there are certain things that are built in to make us rigid, to make us stiff, to make us hard. And we lift, and we run, and we kick, and this is what we call working out. There's another kind of working out that is ancient. It goes back to the time of Lao Tzu and before, which is called yoga. And yoga means union. It means union with your source. And when you do yoga, you can stay in the same place. You can do the equivalent of 8 miles. When I used to run 8 miles, I had to run 4 miles that way, turn around, 4 miles back. And I'd be sweating. Now I can do yoga, and I can just stand in one place. And in 90 minutes, by being supple, by making myself stretch, by not being hard and rigid, I can get that out there, I can get that leg up, I can do these kinds of things, and 90 minutes later, it's like I'm totally sweating and I feel so different. I used to, when I would go out at night to eat or something, after running so many miles, running marathons and doing those things, I'd go to get up and it would be, okay, it's going to take a little while, because everything was so, that doesn't happen anymore because I've given up hard. I've given up being rigid and substituted it for being supple, for being flexible, for living a life in which I don't have to always be so fierce. Listen to this verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my all-time favorites, verse number 76. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he becomes hard and stiff. All things, including the grass and the trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Stiffness is thus a companion in death. Flexibility is a companion in life. And it's not just for how you exercise, it's how you think. How you think. In front of my place on Maui, there is a beautiful set of 11 or 12 palm trees. And these are like 30, 40, 50 feet tall. They've been there for, I don't know how long, decades. And when the winds come and when the storms come, the storms will blow them over. There they are, watch. And they're just these amazing elastic things. I learned so much from these things. I go out there, when I wrote the essay in the book on the verse 73, I just went out there with the palm trees and I would just commune with these palm trees, and they go all the way up and then they come all the way back. That's a symbol for how we need to think in our own lives. In verse 73 it says, "It is heaven's way to conquer without striving. It does not ask, yet it is supplied with all that it needs. It does not hurry, yet it completes everything on time." One of my favorite lines from the Tao, one of my favorite beliefs from the Tao is this, that you're doing nothing. All of you, you're doing nothing. You're just being done. Just like you were the first 9 months of your life. You think you're out there and you're making this happen and you're making that happen and you've got all these rigid things and you have to apply your life this way. You're not doing anything any more than you were having your fingernails show up when they were supposed to. And look at you, look at all of you, look around. It's like, what held it in yesterday? I don't know, I'm not doing anything. They fall out and they don't fall out no matter how hard I try to keep them in there. Finally, my kid said, give it up. Give it up. So I was over in England, and they told me that I couldn't take my shampoo bottles on the plane. And there's nothing you can do about it. I said, yes, there is. I'll just shave my head. I no longer need shampoo. Okay, so we want to move from stiffness to flexibility. The next thought that I'd like to see us change, that the Tao taught me so much, was living by interfering, to shift that to living by not interfering. Do you know that every one of your children have the anchor of the universe located within them? And that Khalil Gibran, this is a paraphrase, he said, your children are not your children. They are the products of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not for you. They're not there for you. So what are you doing interfering in their lives? Now, I'm not talking about letting them play out in the traffic or play at the edge of a swimming pool if they don't know how to swim. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I called this when I was working on this and living this and practicing this for that full year of 2006, the bite your tongue, zip your lip verses of the Tao. Verse 29 of the Tao. Do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. Everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Allow other people's lives to unfold naturally as well. We have parents, I see them a lot. They're called helicopter parents because they're always hovering. They're hovering over their kids and they're telling them what to do and what not to do. And my son came over from England, my son Shane, and he was going to get ready to go to college, going to college in America. And my wife said to me, so you're going to take him and show him about registration, right? I said, oh yeah, I'll be doing that. She said, well, make sure that you help him because he doesn't have any idea how to register at the school, this great big school with thousands of people. I said, yeah, and I do, right? I would know how to register kids at school, you know. And so Shane got in the car and I said, it's all going to be fine. It'll all be fine. And we drive over to the campus and I drop him off and I have my tennis racket in the back. And he said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm a prophet. I said, I get paid by the thought. And I have a tennis match, and then I have to walk on the beach so that I get paid by the thought. He said, but what about the registration? I said, well, the registration, I said, you'll do a lot like I did when I learned to register. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you'll just go up to the people and say, where is registration? And they'll say, it's over there where all of those people are all lined up. Because I remember those days in a college of 40,000 students or so, finding out how to register. Tracy, did I take you to register, honey? No. So he said, you mean you're just going? I said, yeah, you just go over there. I said, you want daddy to walk with you over and take you through graduate? You're 18 years old and you want daddy to register you? He said, oh, no, I wouldn't want that. So we got home at the end of the evening, when I got back home, and my wife had said to me, she said, did you help Shane at registration? Oh, I said, I gave him so much help. Probably the most help he ever had in his life. I taught him how to do things for himself. And so that I wouldn't have to be interfering and hovering over and figuring it all out for them. My children know that when their science project comes up, that I'm there for consultation. But I passed science. I got through that myself. And you'll be doing your own science project. If I can help you, I'll be happy to help you. But I'm not going to be getting the glue and figuring out how to make a time clock and all of that. I said, you know, just look at a clock. That's how you tell time for me, whatever it might be. And it's not an uncaring and it's not a callous attitude at all. It's an awareness that your children have the anchor of the universe located within them. That's what Lao Tzu said. Now, my dear friend, who I love so much, she's right here in the audience, Carrie, right there, Carrie Evans from Maui. She has two beautiful little daughters. And she asked me if I would watch them one afternoon when my grandson, Carter, was visiting. I said, I'd be happy to watch them. She said, but you don't understand. I mean, they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that. I said, you just go off, and she was studying for an exam. I said, you go study, do whatever you have to do. I can handle 3 little kids out at the swimming pool for 3 or 4 hours. I can handle that. So she went off, very nervous, gave me lists, told me what to do, what they might say, what they might not say. And then if she says, now if Kylie says this, you tell Kylie, and if Kamiley says it was Kylie, Kamiley, and Carter. All right? So they go out there, and right here, there's a little pool over here, a little swimming pool. And I watch them over in the swimming pool, and Kylie takes the water and splashes my grandson, Carter, and splashes Kamiley, and Kamiley comes over to me and runs over within 2 minutes. Says, Kylie splashed me. Well, of course, I'm working on the Tao. Non-interference. And I said, splashing, honey, is in the way of things. When you're near water, splashing will take place. She said, yeah, but she splashed me. I said, you'll probably work this out. This will all be fine. And she stood there for the longest time with her little lip and so on, and finally she realized she wasn't getting anywhere with me. She went back. Before you know it, one of them had taken, now Kylie and Kamiley are teaming up against Carter. And they pushed him under or whatever. Now one of them is 5, and one of them is 4, and one of them is 7 or 8. And Carter comes running over as fast as he can, runs over. He calls me Bampa. I'm Grandpa. Bampa. Bampa, Bampa, Miley pushed me under the water. I said, Carter, I'm a Taoist master. But Bampa, she pushed me. She put me under the water. I said, you'll just have to work this one out, Carter. I'm a Taoist master. This went on all for the first hour or so. But I noticed as I was less interfering that they were working it out. They tried again after a few times. They'd come over and they wanted this and they wanted them pushed and wanted that. But each time when I let them know that I was watching and making sure they were safe, but I wasn't going to interfere. I wasn't going to resolve it. I wasn't going to settle their disputes for them. I wasn't going to be a helicopter parent, even for an afternoon. And the way that it resolved itself was they have the anchor of the universe within them. They have a nature. They know what to do. One of my favorite things always to say to my children when there's a conflict is, you know what the right thing to do is. What do you think? You know. You have it in your heart. You are a divine being. They all know that. I've said those words to them over and over again. You'll figure it out. You'll work it out. Not I'm going to interfere. I'm going to tell them what to do. You can practice this so many places, so many ways in your life, particularly as parents, even in business. It's very important in businesses to allow the people to say at the end of the day, right out of the Tao, oh, we did that ourselves. We did it ourselves. In the Tao it says, there's a time for everything, and everything in its time. There's a time for everything. Listen to this. There's a time for being ahead, and a time for being at peace. There's a time for being in motion, and a time for being at rest. There's a time for being vigorous, and a time for being exhausted. And in the Bible, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under the sun. I practice, this was so helpful to me, particularly as I do my yoga practice. And in my yoga practice, it's there are some very exhausting postures. I do this Bikram hot yoga, all right? So it's 105 or between 105 and 110 for 90 minutes. And there's one that I used to hate. It's called triangle, you know? And so you put your foot out here and then you do this and then you get yourself up and you go all the way down and you get yourself in balance like here. So you balance down, and you take your arms out here and then you take these like this, and it's 105 degrees in there. You take one and you're looking up here at your arm and you look and you look and you look and then you bring it back and it lasts a full minute. And I used to just wait for that minute to be over. Oh my God, when are they going to bring me out of this posture? It was so exhausting. I started practicing what the Tao teaches, and I remembered there's a time for being exhausted. There's a time for that. And as I practiced that, I said, and there's a time for being at rest. And it's coming, hopefully soon. But in your life, there's an awareness that there is a time for all the things that go on that you think shouldn't be happening. In the Tao it says that hidden in all misfortune is good fortune. Hidden in the misfortune that you have is good fortune, because no storm can last forever. Even nature cannot create a storm that lasts forever. Ultimately, hidden within every storm is calmness. Hidden within every flood is drought and dryness. Hidden within all of the storms of your life is the peace that you desire. And it leans on you if you stop telling yourself and just let yourself go with it, to be at harmony with it, rather than trying. You can see why this is called the wisest book ever written, and we're just touching on it here, just touching on this. Lao Tzu was green before Al Gore. He was. This is verse 39 of the Tao Te Ching. When man interferes with the Tao, the sky becomes filthy, the earth becomes depleted, the equilibrium crumbles, creatures become extinct, therefore nobility is rooted in humility. Finally, I'd like to say to you, in understanding this idea of the Tao, is to take time yourself for being in nature. Take an hour a day. Every day of your life, take an hour a day, no matter how busy you are, no matter what scheduling that you have, to get out in nature. Walk barefoot on the grass. Walk barefoot. It's one of the great ways to overcome an inability to sleep at night. Just go out when you can't sleep and just walk on the grass, walk on the earth, and reconnect yourself. Now, go out and be with the tree and look at what you can learn from nature. Look at these trees. Look at these animals. You can study. Look at that. You can study a flower like that is so magnificent as it's unfolding. That's an actual photograph of this thing growing and unfolding there. Be with that. You have much to learn from nature, from water, from the sky, from the winds, from the trees, from the birds. The more you do it, the more you see yourself in all of them. The more you'll feel yourself as a connected being, living the Tao. Another thought to change. To change from thinking big to thinking small. It's so much of the Tao has in it statements that seem so paradoxical and so confusing to us. More is less. Less is more. Think small and get great things done. Accomplish great things. Listen to verse 64 of the Tao Te Ching. A tree that fills a man's embrace grows from a seedling. A tower 9 stories high starts with 1 brick. And here's the most famous line out of the Tao. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with what?
The first step.
1 first step. Okay? So, today, I can stand up here on this stage in this beautiful sacred place, in this beautiful yin-yang symbol, on this incredibly beautiful set that feels so much like nature. And I can say to you that in a very short time, this year, I will have completed 20 years without taking a drink of alcohol. 20 years, okay? Thank you. Now that's big. That's big. Because I drank every day. Not to get drunk, but I drank every day. 2 or 3 beers every evening after running, and it was like, and I couldn't remember a day when I hadn't had, I thought back 10 years, 12, I couldn't think of a day, not one day in the previous decade or two that I had not had a beer, or several beers. So that's big. And if I would have tried, if I'd have said to myself 20 years ago, Wayne, you're going to quit drinking for the next 20 years, I would have gone immediately and had a drink. Because it's just too big, isn't it? It's just too big. You don't do big things. You do small things and thus accomplish great things. It's a very important distinction to make. Whatever it is that you would like to create or contribute or become in your life, take 1 step. How did I let drinking go for 20 years? And I don't even know about tomorrow. I never think about tomorrow and whether I'm going to have a drink. All I know for sure is that this won't be the day. I do it 1 day at a time. That's how you overcome anything called an addiction in your life. You take it, you reconnect yourself to the source from which you came, which is a source of what? Well-being, isn't it? And you get back and return, get on the return trip and saying, I am connected to well-being. And I'll do this 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second if I have to, at a time. And when you do it, I mean, it's behind in all of the programs for overcoming addictions, and all of the work of Bill W., all of the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, all of the work of any kind of addictions. It isn't just alcohol. It can be food. It can be addiction to your emails. It can be addiction to work. It can be addiction to so many things that so many people find that they can't get past. And to move themselves into a place where I think small. I ran 7 marathons in my running years. And about the 22nd or 23rd mile, you begin to ask yourself about your sanity. And what am I doing here? And my body is breaking down. But the way that you finish the marathon is not by saying, I'm going to run 26 miles. You don't do that, especially when you've still got 5 or 6 to go. You just say to yourself, can I put my foot in front of the next one? Can I take one step at a time? Can I do it one step at a time? And before you know it, you've accomplished great things. I watched my wife give birth to 4 children right there in her in the delivery room with her. And she does not, when you have a baby, it takes 9 months, doesn't it? You don't say to yourself, oh my God, I gotta have a baby, I gotta get pregnant, I gotta deliver it, I gotta go through labor, because that'll just drive you. And there are people who do that. And it's a torture for them. But I watched her do it one moment at a time in labor. Not what's going to happen an hour from now, what's going to happen this afternoon, am I going to have the... None of that. And she did it all naturally because it was all... And her mind was so strong as she was doing it that I couldn't even penetrate. I couldn't even communicate with her. She was so focused on just being here. She would say, these are not labor pains. These are just signals. Just signal. And I can take this signal. I can do this for 1 minute. I can do this. It's the way everything gets done. I watch the great tennis players on the planet. Roger Federer, Pete Sampras, these people that are really masters at this game that I played for so many years, not even close to those kinds of levels. And they'll be in a tournament, they'll have a seeding, and they'll say, here's the first round, here's the second round, here's the third round. There's no such thing as playing the 4th round before you've played the first round. And then when you get to the first round, you don't go out there and say, well, I've got to beat this person in 3 sets. You say, I'm going to think 1 serve at a time. I'm going to think 1 point at a time. And every great athlete, I don't care who they are, they will always say, I can't think out there in big ways. I can only think small. Thinking small is what gets great things done. Verse 63, achieve greatness in little things. Take on difficulties while they are still easy. Do great things while they are still small. The sage, one of my daughter's names, the sage, does not attempt anything very big and thus achieves greatness. Greatness comes from being in the moment, here, present, in the now. The sage confronts difficulties but never experiences them. This is the idea of thinking small. And finally, I'd like to see you change from this thought. Change from seeing yourself as separate to seeing yourself as connected to everyone and everything in the universe. Our ego tells us that we are separate, that who we are is this body that we have, and everybody out there is separate from me. Nothing has been more profound and more powerful and important for me than this verse of the Tao Te Ching. This idea that we are all one. That all of us emanated from the same source. And by doing so, by emanating from the same source, we need to see ourselves as connected to every single being, every single person, every single flower, every single tree, every single animal. If you can see yourself in everyone, we're all connected. It makes about as much sense to me to have a smoking section in a restaurant as it does to have a peeing section in a swimming pool, right? Oh, no, kids, no, don't pee over here. We pee over here. Does that make any sense? The Native Americans, one of my favorite quotes, I've used it many, many times. The Native Americans would say, no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. No tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. We are all branches on a tree called humanity. When you read the Tao, when you read this idea about changing these thoughts and changing your life, you're going to see endless verses that speak to the absurdity of the idea of you having an enemy. The idea that you and anyone else on this planet is an enemy. In the Tao it says, I and enemy cannot exist in the same sentence. And he said, even those who go to war, the ones who will triumph in war are those who go to war without an enemy. And they will treat every victory in war not as something to celebrate, but as a funeral, as an indication that we haven't reached the highest place within ourselves to see that even those people that we judge to be our enemy are really connected to us. And it says in the Tao that a bad man is a good man's job, and a good man is a bad man's teacher. A good man is a bad man's teacher. So finding that and seeing that, listen to verse 10. Carrying body and soul and embracing the one, can you avoid separation? One who heeds this power brings the Tao to this very earth. This is the primal virtue. This was so helpful to me as I thought about it. Remember, I spent 4.5 days on each one of these verses. And in each one of those 4.5 days, I wasn't writing. I wrote the last 4 or 5 hours of those 4.5 days. For 4.5 days, I took that verse and I went out into the world and I looked at everyone that I encountered, everyone that I saw, and I tried to see myself in them. The person that was, dressed differently than I would dress, the person who was not as attractive, the person who was very old, the person who was very young, the person who used language particularly that was possibly offensive. When I would look out there and I would practice not judging, because the only difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment, isn't it? It's just a judgment. It's just a judgment. And if we want to end violence in our lives and in our society, we have to learn to change our thoughts. Remember the dandelions? When I was growing up out in Michigan, we had these dandelions. The dandelions would have, at a certain time of the year, they would get all these little fuzz balls at the top of them. The yellow little flower part. I always liked the dandelions. I thought they were really beautiful. And then they have these little fuzz balls. Now imagine if you want to end the problem of dandelions on your lawn, and you see them all out there with all their little fuzz balls. So you go out there and you take a shovel and you turn it upside down and you start smacking all of the dandelions like this. And what do you do when you use violence to attempt to end the presence of these dandelions, which are problem for you on your lawn? Is they all scatter. And then in the spring, guess what you got? You got more. You got new generations of dandelions. There's such a lesson in that, isn't there? There's a great lesson that when we use violence as a means to resolve our disputes, whether it's individually with each other, or whether it's in countries, or whether it's in communities, whenever it is that we resort to that kind of not seeing myself in others, and out of this kind of a consciousness will emerge those people who will ultimately begin to get this. Because if we don't get it, if we don't really get it, civilization as we know it will not survive. It will not survive. We have to learn that the people that we call enemies, no matter how horrendous they may behave toward us, there is still something of us in all of them. And we can figure out a way. Yes, we of course have to defend ourselves, and yes, we don't allow people to push us, or all of those kinds of things, but at a deeper and a higher level, Lao Tzu was asking us to go within and find that place of peace, and try to reach out to that and help someone to make a U-turn those people can be reached because they have the anchor of the universe located within them. In verse 25 of the Tao it says, thus to know humanity, understand earth. To know earth, understand heaven, which is where earth came from. To know the way, understand the great within yourself. Within yourself. Look within and see it. Now, every single person watching this program will have conflicts with somebody in their life on a fairly regular basis, especially if you're in a marriage or in a partnership of some kind. Certainly if you have children, you're going to have conflicts. Now think about what you do when you have a conflict and that conflict comes to an end. The conflict is over. You've expressed your opinion. You may have yelled at each other, you may have screamed at each other, you may not have understood each other, but it's over now. How do you end the conflict? Lao Tzu says, the person of Tao will eliminate all of the pain, all of the stress, all of the anger, all of the hatred, if they decide to end the conflict with love. Just be the one who ends the silence by saying, we don't agree, but I love you. And it's all over. You have moved a person from staying in the world of the 10,000 things into the world of God, into the world of Source, because the Source has no violence in it. It creates endless numbers of flowers and beings and creations without using any force at all. There's no force there. Here's one of my teachers who lived in Bombay, which is now Mumbai in India. His name was Nisargadatta Maharaj. He said, wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And in between the two, my life moves. In between the two. The ability to take a conflict and to end it with love is one of the most powerful things that you can do. It has been a great lesson for me. When we have a conflict, what we do is I will be the person that will pick up that phone. You can be certain of it. I will end that conflict with love. And guess what that does to the conflict? It's over. It's over. You can't pick a fight with someone who just doesn't want to fight anymore, who just sends you love. So I want to summarize some of these thoughts, and there are so many. Change your thoughts based upon the wisdom of the Tao, and your life will change. There's many principles to live by in the Tao. First, remind yourself that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Bring happiness to all that you do. You accomplish much by trying less. It's so inconsistent, isn't it, with what we lived in the Western world. But the less you try, when I go out and swim in the ocean, and I do it almost every day, I try to do between 30 minutes and an hour every day, being out there in that ocean. And I just get out there, and if I try less, my arms just seem to know what to do, and the breathing just all works, and I can swim all day. As soon as I try, as soon as I struggle, as soon as I try, the minute that I move myself into trying, it's like if I were to take this little cap here and drop it right there and say, I'm going to try to pick this up. I'm going to try to pick this up. This is what Lao Tzu was speaking about. So all of this, I'm trying, I'm really trying. All of this is called, in reality, not picking it up. That's what that's called, not picking it up. But when I just get easy and do less. See yourself, the Tao says, in everyone you encounter. A great lesson. Every single being, especially the ones that we read about who we're told are our enemies. See yourself in them. Know that whoever they are, wherever they live, they want what we want. They want what I want. They want to be at peace. They don't want to be always struggling. They don't want to be sick. They just want to be loved, whoever they are. I know the skepticism of that. It's like, yes, but, all of the yes, buts. But if they got it too, Lao Tzu wasn't speaking to, well, some are going to get this and some probably won't. He was speaking to all of us. Trust in others, the Tao says, to know what's best for themselves. Trust in that. Trust in the pliability, the flexibility of your babies. God, those little babies, they're so great when they're like, 2 weeks old. You can take their foot, put it behind their neck, stick it around here like this, put it in their mouth. They're so flexible. I mean, you can do anything. You pick them up, you turn them upside down. You watch them when they're starting to learn to walk. And they run, crash, they go down into the walls and all of this. And you think, oh my God, this kid will never walk again. Up they go, and they don't. Trust in their flexibility. Live without attachment and be generous. Be strong by bending. By bending. We need to learn this in our lives. We need to learn this in the world. It's not so important to be right. It's so much more important when you have a choice to be right or to be kind. Always pick kind. Always pick kind. Practice radical humility. Live low. Live low like the ocean. Stay low. And all the streams will come to it. That's why it's so powerful, because it doesn't lord anything over anyone. And rather than looking for miracles, see everything as miraculous. Everything in your life. There was a man who had a Tao experience, what I call a quantum moment. His name was John Newton. He lived back in the beginning of the 18th century. And he was crossing the ocean. He was a slave trader. He had a ship full of human cargo that he was going to trade into slavery in the most hideous practice that was so common at that time in our history. And in the middle of a storm, on his way over there with all of these people, he was 22 years old or 23 years old. And he thought he was going to die, and he thought it was like he must have hit a hurricane or something out there that was before satellites could warn people. And while he thought he was in that state of dying, he took out a pencil and a paper, and he wrote on the back of an envelope, he wrote, "I once was lost, and now I'm found." And it was grace that taught my heart to feel. It was grace that brought me home. And when the storm was over, he had a moment. He reconnected to his source. Anybody out there can reconnect to the source, to the Tao, and become a being of Tao. Remember, it's a return trip. And you can make that return trip while you're alive. Remember the parrot. He knows much more than we did. And he returned back to Africa, and he released the slaves, it is said. And for the next 55 years of his life, he shifted and became the most ardent spokesman as an abolitionist to abolish that hideous practice of slavery. That's what he devoted his life to it. A former slave, it's like going from Saul to Paul, from being a person who crucifies and murders Christians to being the author of a big portion of the New Testament as St. Paul. In a moment, it's possible for any of us. And there's a lady who I think has one of the great voices on this planet today. Her name is Cecilia, and she has been traveling with me. She's from Norway. She has sung at conventions and places that I have been. She sings, we call her the nightingale, don't we? She's an angel. She sings like an angel. And she's accompanied by the whales. These whales, these beautiful creatures who are in my front yard every morning on Maui, the humpbacks, who have these beautiful tails that flash and flash, and they just, and some days I'll be walking along the beach and I will hear someone say, "Honey," this guy was having on a honeymoon there, and he said, "Honey, come on in. You can hear the whales singing, they're all singing." And she's going, I don't think I want to get my feet wet, and I don't think I get my hair wet. And he said, "No, but you can hear them." And I flew into there with my clothes on and went underneath, and I stayed under there for like an hour, up and back, listening to these sounds of the whales, these beautiful creatures in nature, these natural beings who I feel so connected to and so a part of. And she sings accompanied by the whales. Now, getting those whales into the sound booths and getting the earphones on, very, very difficult. You got to really appreciate what we did here to bring this to you. Right? And here she is. Her name is Cecilia. She sings Amazing Grace, accompanied by the whales. One of my truly favorite people and greatest singers I've known. Cecilia? Thank you. Namaste. I want to close this beautiful presentation on the Tao, Cecilia, with a poem that was written by a woman. Her name is Naomi Long Madgett. She's from Detroit, went to Wayne State University. She was named the Poet Laureate of Detroit, an acclaimed African-American poet. Listen to these words. It sums up all that I've been saying. I wouldn't coax the plant if I were you. Such watchful nurturing may do it harm. Let the soil rest from so much digging, and wait until it's dry before you water it. The leaf's inclined to find its own direction. Give it a chance to seek the sunlight for itself. Much growth is stunted by too careful prodding, too eager tenderness. The things we love, we have to learn to leave alone. Thank you.
Another new way of being for me is to think of yourself in terms of personal authority rather than being an authoritarian. Personal authority. A person who has authority never needs to dominate anyone else, ever. Dominating doesn't become necessary. In business, you can have authority. The people who have the most authority are the ones who listen the most, and the ones who are the most conscientious about what do other people have to say. A person in a relationship who has to dominate somebody else and has to make the other person submissive shows that they don't have authority, because they're getting their power not from within for themselves, but on the basis of who they can control. And that never lasts. That never lasts. The only thing that lasts is having inner power, if you will. Know thyself. That's what Shakespeare said. Know thyself. The more you know yourself, the more you become honest with yourself, honesty becomes just a way of life. No, I don't think the world necessarily does, but you can't run your world. You can't run your world based upon what the rest of the people in the world want or don't want. To me, honesty is like, it's a karma that goes out into the world. How people treat you in the world is their karma. How you react is yours. And when you react to it with dishonesty, that's what you're putting out into the world, dishonesty. And when you put dishonesty out into the world, that's what's going to come back to you, because what goes out is what comes back. That all, as you sow, so shall you reap. I mean, it's in every great institution that there is in the world, whether it's a religion or a philosophy or whatever. What you put out is what comes back. Whatever you plant is what you're going to get back. And the more that you put out honesty, just because it's what you are, because you are being honesty, you're not trying to be honest, you're just being honesty, then that's what will come back to you on a regular basis. And when it doesn't, you'll just see that as another test for you to pass. For me, it has become a way of life. It's called serenity instead of acquisitions. The more you try to acquire, the more you try to get, the more you try to collect in your life and evaluate yourself on the basis of that, the less serenity you're going to have. More is less. It's almost a secret of the universe. Serenity means inner peace. It means that you can find joy in every moment that you have in your life instead of always looking for it. It means that while you are driving along the countryside, and seeing, instead of saying, oh, I'm on my way to this point, that you can open your eyes and see it with new eyes. See the rolling mountains, see the grass, see the deer, see the sky. You can just stop wherever you are in this second, wherever you are, and just look around you, and you can begin to appreciate just your surroundings and your environment. Then you can begin to appreciate the people that are in your life, and even the ones that are negative and you're having the most difficulty with. You can practice a new way of being with them, which is sending them love, sending them flowers, send them books, send them a tape, send them something, and just see what kind of reaction that you get. Super emotional health is just an attitude. An attitude is everything. And it's being personally an authority on yourself rather than authoritarian and trying to be dominating someone else or to be dominated. And serenity, which is the name of my little girl, my youngest daughter, Serena, rather than acquisitions and accumulations and trying to prove yourself that way. And when you get that serenity, which comes from the way that you think always, then you will replace all of the other junk that keeps you back here between 6 and 1 on that clock. And once you get past it, you'll never, ever be able to go back. Because the light, living in the light, is a way of being that if you're not there, you don't get it yet, but once you see it, and once it begins to take over your life, you can never go back. That is your purpose. Your purpose isn't to try to be loving. Your purpose is to be love, and only have that to give away.
What being open to everything means. Everything means just what it says, no exceptions. When someone suggests something to you that conflicts with your conditioning, rather than responding with, "That's ridiculous. We all know that's impossible," say instead, "I've never considered that before. I'll think about it." Open yourself up to the spiritual ideas of all people and listen with an open mind to crazy schemes and ideas that at first seem to be outrageous. If someone suggests that crystals can cure hemorrhoids, that natural herbs can lower cholesterol, that people will eventually be able to breathe underwater, or that levitation is possible, listen and be curious. Let go of your attachments to what you've been trained to believe. Open your mind to all possibilities, because whether you believe something is possible or impossible, either way, you'll be right. How can that be true? Your agreement with reality and all that's possible determines what you'll become. If you're convinced that you can't become wealthy and famous or artistic or a professional athlete, a great singer, or whatever, you will act upon that inner conviction that prevents you from manifesting what you'd really like. All that you'll get from your effort is being right. When you need to be right, you're attached to your conditioned reflex of the way things are and always have been, and you assume they always will be. Releasing your attachments. Your attachments are the source of all your problems. The need to be right, to possess someone or something, to win at all costs, to be viewed by others as superior. These are all attachments. The open mind resists these attachments and consequently experiences inner peace and success. To release attachments, you have to make a shift in how you view yourself. If your primary identification is with your body and your possessions, your ego is the dominant force in your life. If you can tame your ego sufficiently, you'll call upon your spirit to be the guiding force in your life. As a spiritual being, you can observe your body and be a compassionate witness to your existence. Your spiritual aspect sees the folly of attachments because your spiritual self is an infinite soul. Nothing can make you happy or successful. These are inner constructs that you bring to your world rather than what you receive from it. If you think peaceful thoughts, you'll feel peaceful emotions, and that's what you'll bring to every life situation. If you're attached to being right or absolutely need something in order to be at peace or to be successful, you'll live a life of striving, yet never arriving. It's possible to have a burning desire, yet not have attachments. You can have an inner vision of what you intend to manifest and still detach yourself from the outcome. How? Consider this observation in A Course in Miracles. Infinite patience produces immediate results. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Infinite patience implies an absolute certainty that what you'd like to manifest will indeed show up in a perfect order and exactly on time. The immediate result you receive from this inner knowing is a sense of peace. When you detach from the outcome, you're at peace, and you'll ultimately see the fruits of your convictions. Suppose you had a choice between two magic wands. With wand A, you can have any physical thing you desire by simply waving it. With wand B, you can have a sense of peace for the rest of your life, regardless of what circumstances arise. Which one would you pick? A guarantee of stuff or inner peace for the remainder of your life? If you opt for peace, then you already have 1B. Simply have a mind that is open to everything but attached to nothing. Let it all come and go as it will. Enjoy it all, but never make your happiness or success dependent on an attachment to anything, any place, and particularly any person. In all of your relationships, if you can love someone enough to allow them to be exactly what they choose to be, without any expectations or attachments from you, you'll know true peace in your lifetime. True love means you love a person for what they are, not for what you think they should be. This is an open mind and an absence of attachment. In essence, I'm urging you to stop taking your life so personally. You can end any and all suffering by reminding yourself that nothing in the universe is personal. Of course, you've been taught to take life very personally, but this is an illusion. Tame your ego and absolutely free yourself from ever taking anything personally. Keep these thoughts in mind, particularly when you feel lost or unsure of your purpose. My purpose is about giving. I'll direct my thoughts off of me and spend the next few hours looking for a way to be of service to anyone or any creature on our endangered planet. This will bring you back to a realization that it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're able to give. In order to fully give and be of service and ultimately feel purposeful, you must be able to say yes when you ask yourself, do I really possess what it is that I wish to give away?
Being peace. Peace isn't something that you ultimately receive when you slow down the pace of your life. Peace is what you're capable of being and bringing to every encounter and event in the waking moments of your life. Most of us are waging a non-stop internal mental skirmish with everyone we encounter. Being peaceful is an inner attitude that you can enjoy when you've learned to silence your incessant inner dialogue. Being peaceful isn't dependent on what your surroundings look like. It seldom has anything to do with what the people around you think, say, or do. A noiseless environment isn't a requirement. St. Francis's famous prayer states it better than I can. Make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, St. Francis wasn't asking God to provide him with peace. He was asking for guidance to be more like the peace he trusted was his source. Being peace is different from looking for peace. This principle isn't about merely choosing tranquil thoughts when you're feeling frayed and anxious. I suggest picturing a container deep within yourself out of which all of your thoughts flow. Inside of this container, at its very center, imagine a candle flame. You need to make a commitment that this flame in the center of the container, holding all of your thoughts, will never, ever even flicker, though the very worst may go before you. This is your container of peace, and only peaceful thoughts can fuel this burning candle. You don't need to change your thoughts as much as you need to learn to be an energy of peace lighting the way and attracting serene, harmonious thoughts and beings. In this way, you'll become a being of peace. Obviously, you take this inner receptacle with you wherever you go. When people attempt to put some kind of pressure on you, when you feel overwhelmed, or when situations arise that previously incited your distress or bellicosity, you can immediately turn to your inner candle flame of peace and see how to keep your light glowing. This is being the peace that you wish for yourself. This is offering a matching vibration to your desire to be a tranquil and amicable being rather than a person suffering from the disease of trying to make life go faster. You've already seen the results of that folly, and you notice the symptoms of stress in virtually everyone you meet. As a being of peace, you make a huge impact on those around you. It's almost impossible to be totally stressed out in the presence of someone who has opted to be peace. Peace is a higher and faster energy. When you're being peace, just your presence alone will often nullify the uneasiness and the tension in those around you. In fact, this state causes pheromones of measurable energy to emanate from you. They affect others who become more peaceful without even being aware of the transformation taking place. The secret of this principle for restoring balance to your life is be the peace and harmony you desire. You cannot get it from anything or anyone else. So you're not ready to take Nisargadatta's profound advice and just be? Then work at becoming that being with the inner light of a steady candle flame. Whenever you think something, you must go to this container, select a thought, and send it out into the world. Using this metaphor, the real issue isn't about simply selecting positive, loving thoughts and having your world shift back into balance. The real issue is what's in the container. That is, what's in the heart reservoir you have inside of you to give to others.
This container within is connected to an endless supply of love. You need only turn your thoughts to that source to be filled with love. Love for yourself, love for the world, love for life, love for all others, and most significantly, love for your source of being. Then this is all that you'll have available to give away, and consequently, all that returns to you. It's been said that the difference between all of us living at ordinary levels of human consciousness and those we call saints is that they never forget God even for a single moment. They're cheerful when life is difficult, patient when others are impatient, and loving when others respond with hatred. Why? Because of that container. Ordinary people have a container out of which they pluck loving thoughts in certain circumstances. The saint has an internal vessel that contains nothing else out of which and into which love flows freely. So rather than working on simply changing your thoughts in order to become more peaceful and loving, why not shoot for the moon and think like the saint that you are? Focus on that container within. When you continually say, Holy Spirit, guide me now, you'll see your container overflowing with so many loving thoughts that it's impossible for negativity in any form to alter the balance within. We seem to live in a totally out of balance world where our desires for feeling peaceful are challenged by the myriad non-peaceful energies that are considered newsworthy. But we do have a choice in this matter. And we can choose to realign ourselves energetically with our desire to live in this world peacefully, regardless of what's going on around us, and in spite of the non-peaceful energy we're so often subjected to. Sogyal Rinpoche observed that, quote, 2 people have been living in you all of your life. One is the ego, garrulous, demanding, hysterical, calculating. The other is the hidden spiritual being whose still voice of wisdom you have only rarely heard or attended to, unquote. I'm inviting you to restore some balance by looking for heaven everywhere and listening and attending to that hidden spiritual being that is within you at all times, begging you to pay it more heed.
Where there is injury, pardon. This is about healing, whether it's physical or emotional. Bringing a sense of pardon to the presence of injury. I've just produced a tape with Hay House called The Secrets of Your Own Healing Power, in an address I gave to a chiropractic convention a while back. And the secrets of your own healing power are basically to understand, well, here's a letter that was written by a woman. Her name is Gladys McGarry. And she wrote a book called The Physician Within You. Wonderful book. She's a medical doctor. And she relates a conversation with her son Carl, who had just finished his internship and was specializing in orthopedic surgery. He told his mother about his fears about having people's lives in his own hands, and she wrote him this letter. She said, Carl, as a surgeon, you may pull an incision together and suture it well, but you cannot make it heal. If you think you are the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you understand that you are a channel through which healing moves, and that you are contacting the healing force within your patients, you have nothing to fear. You will have awakened the physician within them and sent them on their way to heal themselves. Healing, to me, is bringing the presence of a faster and a higher energy to the presence of this thing we call injury or disease, which is really the reaction of our bodies to our minds. And our minds have, again, the illusion that we're separate from God, and therefore our bodies are commanded by a ego mind rather than a sacred mind. And that when we move ourselves, and this is one of the biggest questions that you had in all the questions I read last night and this morning, it was about, what about these people who get diseases? What about children who have diseases? What about people who get AIDS, and all of these kinds of things, and how can you ask them to take responsibility, and so on. And it's not an issue that is an easy one to deal with because it's very emotionally entrenched. But just like starvation is part of the perfection of this universe that I don't like or agree with or understand, and so I put my attention on my desire to end it. And I know that that comes from God as well. I feel the same way about disease. I think that some children incarnate to be here for a certain amount of time. And just like my father may have shown up here to teach me compassion and forgiveness by being the kind of person he was, I think a child might show up in a body that has AIDS or in an injury or whatever. Again, if you understand and believe and know that there's a perfection to this universe and there's a force operating that holds it all together, and that we have an infinite amount of time to work this whole thing out, we begin to no longer tell ourselves that death and these kinds of things that are taking place that are so painful for us are not a part of the perfection of it all. They are. And when you begin to bring pardon to the presence of injury, what you also do is you bring a higher consciousness. And when you bring a higher consciousness, you begin to detach yourself from this body and realize that that's not who you are. I am not this thing that I occupy. And once you're detached from it, like a Helen Keller wrote some of the most powerful and beautiful and inspirational material with a body that hardly worked at all. And when a Lance Armstrong, who is diagnosed with testicular cancer, has 2 tumors the size of grapefruit in his stomach and in his lungs, and 14 the size of golf balls in his lung areas, and 2 the size of oranges in his brain, and is told to die. And his wife brings a bike and puts it at the foot of his bed, and somehow something magical, because he was told, not only will you not walk again, you won't live and breathe again. He not only went past it, transcended it by looking at that bike that his wife placed at the foot of his bed, but he went to the most grueling test of physical endurance there is on the planet and won the Tour de France. After that diagnosis and that experience, the Tour de France takes 22 days. It's 2,000 plus miles through the Pyrenees, highest mountain peaks, lowest mountain peaks, every single day riding. The most grueling test of physical endurance there is. And not only did he win it once, but the next year, just to emphasize that this wasn't some fluke, he did it again. Twice. He's only the 2nd American ever to win the thing. And he did it 2 years in a row after that cancer. And he wrote his autobiography, and it's called It's Not About the Bike. I recommend you read it. He brought something to the presence of this, and a miracle took place. And the law that has ever allowed any miracle to take place in the history of humanity, it's still on the books. It hasn't been repealed. It's there. Where there is injury, let me bring pardon.
You want to experience prosperity at a miraculous level, you must leave behind your old ways of thinking and develop a new way of imagining what is possible for you to experience in your life. Take an inner inventory and see if the following statements are a part of your consciousness. There's just not enough to go around. You have to get yours or someone else will grab it before you. There are only so many fish in the sea. You never know if opportunity will knock. If these and similar thoughts are part of your personal inventory, then probably you were taught that you are living in a world of shortages. The concept of lack has been embedded into your belief system. In order to develop an inner vision of prosperity, you will have to shed this old vision of scarcity. The following 5 essentials of a prosperity consciousness can help you to make this shift. 1. You don't need anything else to experience prosperity. Prosperity is first and foremost a mind game. You must know that you have all that you need right now. You are lacking nothing to gain prosperity for yourself. You are led to believe that the material things are reality and are providing you with what you need, while in fact they are only more matter which is made up of more invisible space. What you need, you already have, and when you know it, go within and create it in your mind. The divine sustenance you seek in the form of material things or money will be manifested in whatever amounts needed. You must develop this new inner sense and trust in the magic of believing. Trust in the power of your mind, in the knowing I have been talking about, in that divine guidance that is readily available to you. 2. You cannot create prosperity if you believe in lacks. When you have mastered the ability to become a spiritual being as outlined in the first part of this tape, you will understand that you lack absolutely nothing. All that you need for your life is already here. When you say to yourself, I don't have enough education, talent, or strength to experience prosperity, you are operating in your mental world from a position of lack. What you have become accustomed to is called deficiency motivation. That is, you assess all of the things that are missing or deficient in your life, and then you set up a plan to repair all of those deficiencies. Thus, you set your goals and go to work at becoming prosperous. But this is a gigantic trap. You will always be suffering from a disease I call more. When you get the money you thought you needed to be prosperous, your mindset hasn't been satisfied. Your mindset is on more, on striving, not arriving. There's another kind of mindset called growth motivation, and this is the trademark of the individual who experiences real magic in the area of prosperity. With growth motivation, you simply change around the inner thinking and decide to do your living within a framework of completeness. You begin to be motivated in your life by your own bliss, by your dreams, to live the life which you imagine to be your calling, your divinely specialized mission for being here, and prosperity becomes your very watchword. Abundance begins to reign into your life. 3. You are not separated into categories. To truly know prosperity, you must learn to stop dividing yourself up and separating yourself from your prosperity. You must learn to go beyond your hypnotized state which has convinced you that there is first you, the thinker, then you, the doer, and finally the concept of what it is that you are thinking and doing. All of this is actually one and the same. All of what you have previously divided up as prosperity thinking, prosperous behavior, and something called prosperity that is located out there must be thought of as one. When you understand this, you will stop looking for prosperity as if it were something that you can wrench from its hiding place. What you need for a prosperous life you already are. It is all you. There are no boundaries. Now take this awareness and implant it in your consciousness. You are not going to find prosperity. It will flow into your life only when you grasp this notion of your singularity. 4. You cannot experience prosperity if you believe that you don't deserve it. If you believe that you are undeserving of prosperity, that is the thought upon which you will conduct your life. Surrender the idea that you are inferior. You are neither superior nor inferior. You simply are, and what you are deserves prosperity. Once again, you have to undo the hypnotized state that led you to this kind of an attitude. It began in your schooling, and it continues today. It is a vulgar, obscene system that creates large numbers of people who know no other way to assess their own value other than in comparison to others, and in so doing, it creates many who simply begin to think that they are not deserving of prosperity in any sense of the word. When you stop buying into that model, you can see that you are just as deserving of prosperity as anyone else on this planet. 5. Rejoice in the prosperity of others. When you feel contemptuous toward the accomplishments or lifestyles of others, or even a twinge of jealousy, you are harboring negativity where love must reside. When you have only love within you, that is all you will have to give away. You cannot be fulfilled and envious at the same time. Foster an inner belief that anyone who has achieved prosperity is entitled to it, and that their success is not a reason for you to feel inadequate or wanting. Have a quiet acceptance of what is. Send it love, and then get on with the business of creating a full, prosperous, loving life for yourself. The manner of how and when it is desired shows up is something that you must not try to control. Manifesting is not about making demands of God in the universe. Manifesting is a cooperative venture in which your intention is aligned with divine intelligence. that intelligence is in all things and in you simultaneously. Demanding that God send your desire according to your timetable and design reinforces the incorrect idea of God as a separate energy. There's a power of infinite patience. This provocative line is from A Course in Miracles. Those who are certain of the outcome can afford to wait, and without anxiety. The notions of certainty and patience go together. When you trust and know that you are connected to that universal all-providing intelligence, then you simply place no time constraints on your manifestation. Your knowing and your infinite patience put you at ease. Your inner sense is that what you want to manifest is already here, and your inner attention is on the feeling of well-being that you are already blessed with what you seek. The inner bliss is a function of the power of your infinite patience. When you are certain about the outcome and unconcerned with the how and when, you have cultivated the power of infinite patience, and simultaneously you have detached yourself from the outcome. When this detachment takes place, you are able to go about your daily business of raising your children, doing your work or training, meditating and communing with God, and just patiently observing. Infinite patience is a sign of trust, and it calls upon infinite love to produce results in your life. When you let go of impatience, you are aligned with the God force, and the anxiety that tells you what is lacking and missing in your life is gone. You will know that God has been patient with you no matter how long it took you to come around, regardless of how far you may have wandered, and no matter how much you may have refused to listen. Infinite patience produces almost immediate results in your life. You become free when you relax your insistence to have it now. As an infinitely patient person, you know that you are already where you want to be, and there are no accidents, and that all that appears to be missing is nothing more than an illusion perpetrated by your ego. With this awareness, impatience leaves, and you stop looking for results of your manifesting meditation. Your patience allows you to remain in silent appreciation of all that is manifested in your life. This practice of patient detachment from outcome is a foreign concept to us. We have been taught that goals, success symbols, and the accumulation of merit badges are the ways to feel important. What follows is a guide for living with the seeming paradox of attempting to manifest something into your life and at the same time not being attached to when and how it shows up. So here's a step-by-step plan for putting patient detachment into your manifesting practice. First, understand the essence of what you desire. What you desire is not necessarily in the realm of things. If you want to manifest money, for example, notice if your attention is centered on the dollars or on the experience and feeling of financial security. The experience is the essence of your desire. By putting your attention on inner feelings, you shift from being gratified by externals. The essence of your desire is a feeling of well-being and joy and an alignment with the universal spirit. You may feel that you truly want to manifest more income and a promotion. Detach yourself from the in-the-world promotion and increase in pay. Put your manifesting energy on the essence. You're wanting to feel more secure and less stress. You will probably begin to see things arriving in your life that reduce your anxiety. They may seem to have very little to do with what you originally thought you wanted. And then secondly, banish doubt and enter into the realm of certainty. When you've removed doubt about your ability to manifest, it will be easy to detach yourself from the outcomes and all of the details. Your trust in yourself and in the divine energy of the universe is all you will need. Then third, leave your expectations and go about your business. Maintain your work and play regime with a new sense of peace originating in your inner knowing about what is manifesting for you. Remain completely detached from the inclination to measure and calculate what is and is not showing up for you. And then fourth, in this step-by-step plan, maintain privacy about your desires. Sharing your manifestation efforts decreases the energy and deflects the energy into the ego's need to gain approval. Then fifth, be aware of the cues that your desires are manifesting. Keep in mind that the way things will show up in your life is not necessarily related to what your rational brain expects. Things may begin popping up into your life that were never there before and which may surprise you as you notice them more and more frequently. These synchronistic events and happenings are the result of beginning to live in a heightened state of awareness. Pay close attention to the cues as they surface and gently tell yourself, it's working, I can see the results. And then sixth, act immediately on the cues that arrive by acknowledging them. When you acknowledge the early signs of arrival of what you wish to manifest, you are giving your inner energy a positive charge and recognizing the divine universal intelligence. This recognition is essential to the continuation of this manifesting process. And seventh, don't think of your manifestation as a special favor. To see manifestation as a favor is to begin the process of bargaining with God and believing in your separateness from all other living things. Your desires manifest because you are in perfect alignment with your source of creation and because you are not placing any limitations on what can come into your life. And then eighth, view any and all obstacles as lessons, not indications of failure. Keep in mind that you are practicing patience and detachment from outcome. Everything that shows up in your life is supposed to. This includes the falls in your life. They provide you with the energy to propel yourself to a higher state of awareness. And then ninth, release all judgment from your manifesting practice. This requires you to be willing to suspend your inclination to judge that which shows up in your life as right or wrong, good or bad, attractive or unattractive. Your judgments halt the flow of universal energy into your life and put you at odds with that divine power. Your ability to manifest depends in large part on your willingness to leave behind the collective judgments that make up the totality of human beliefs. Detaching from these beliefs is one of the greatest challenges of your life. You will probably experience a sense of loss and perhaps a feeling of loneliness as you make this step out of judgment. The reward is that you will begin to expand your own perceptions and accept what others believe are their perceptions. The following 4 examples aren't rules or laws that apply to everyone, but if they do work for others, I'll be even more inspired because it's my intention to be in a space where I'm able to give to others all that I know. I also offer these ideas with a constant reminder that when one listens to Spirit, all things are possible. And even though I'm offering them in a numbered sequence, they certainly don't conform to any linear arrangement. 1. Alignment of feelings. When I feel good, or God, I'm aligned with Spirit. As I tell my children, we must rely on how we feel to determine our state of health, rather than seeking our answers in a medical printout full of numbers. Feeling energized, content, excited, and happy are better indicators of our health and well-being than having our bodily functions assessed by a distant laboratory. A positive, honest response to the question, does this or will this make me feel good, tells us immediately if we're aligned with our creative source or not. 2. Alignments with nature. Everything in nature is in spirit. It isn't spoiled by ego, nor can it ever be. So when nature speaks to us, we should listen intently. When a wild bird touches us, for instance, or a fish brushes by when we're swimming in the ocean or a lake, I believe that it's a direct communication from our source of being. Since these creations of God instinctively keep their distance, when they depart from their DNA patterns to actually contact us physically, I think we should pay attention. So be aware of episodes in nature that arouse spirit and kindle an inner spark of awe and admiration for you. You don't have to discuss it with another being. If it has meaning for you, it's valid. Listen to the winds, the critters, the clouds, the rains, and the oceans. Listen to it all. Indeed, nature has much to teach us, and it will help show the way. All we need to do is align with its perfection and note how it aligns with ours. 3. Alignment with events. Strange occurrences and seemingly inexplicable events may actually be our all-creating source lining up coincidences, in quotes, to teach us and show us the way. The reason we begin to notice all this type of aligned synchronicity is because we've tuned into it. The teachers have always been there, but now we notice them. And our noticing indicates a new level of readiness to listen to our ultimate calling. In fact, these alignments can take some really interesting forms. The same numbers showing up, for example. We awake precisely at 4:44 morning after morning and then see those numbers appear on the odometer, on the radio, as a checkbook balance, at the deli counter, and as an assigned number for a charity walk, causes us to ask, what's going on here? The answer is that the universe is using us to be receptive and pay attention. It's not about playing all fours in a casino or the lottery. It's about knowing that these seemingly accidental repetitions are actually invitations from Spirit to join it. When a book literally falls into our lap or is sent to us by several different people, or even when we keep seeing the title and having it referred to us by others over and over, we need to notice, stop our resistance, and surrender. When we end up reading the contents and applying what it offers, we're aligning ourselves and becoming a vibrational match to the same source that's sending us these signals. And 4, alignments with people. When people line up with our thoughts and mysteriously connect their physical presence with our private inner meanderings, we should take note. We must tell ourselves, Spirit is aligning my thoughts with events that are happening. I'll stay alert to what I'm being offered here because there may be a reason. That's all. Just be cognizant of what might be happening, and by being open to what may be baffling and perhaps indecipherable, we're likely to discover that we're being guided to learn. A few weeks ago, I was reading through a book I'd written 16 years ago. In it, I mentioned a friend, Erlene Rintz, whom I'd attended school with from 4th grade through high school. I put the book down and went jogging, yet Erlene was still on my mind. I thought, I'm going to call her the next time I'm in Detroit. After all, we're both having our 65th birthdays this year. That very evening, I was scheduled to receive the Martin Luther King Mahatma Gandhi Peace Award from the Unity Church of Maui, which would be attended by approximately 1,000 people. As I completed my speech and walked to the lobby to sign autographs, I saw the little girl who sat next to me in grade school and who was my first love and who occupied my thoughts throughout my school years. Believe it or not, as I was thinking of her more than a half-century later, Erlene was thousands of miles from home and hugging me in the lobby of a theater in Lahaina, Maui. It turns out that she was visiting Maui, had seen the award announcement in the newspaper, and had come to the auditorium to surprise me. It was one of those synchronistic alignments of spirit at work. Somehow, at an unconscious level, I was already reconnecting to Erlene without being aware that she was even in the area. Noticing the same folks showing up in different settings, running into people we haven't seen in a while after we've just heard their names mentioned, and repeatedly seeing an individual's name in magazines, on television, or in a local bookstore, are all synchronistic alignments. Spirit is lining up these sequential happenings for a reason. We just need to be open to learning the reason, and it most likely will be revealed. Perhaps it will be a dream or a sudden instant of eureka, or maybe it will become clearer when simply allowed. No matter how the message comes, we'll look back on it with a renewed insight and the benefit of no longer being closed-minded about such possibilities. What I know for certain within my very core is that there's no separation between us and all that we encounter in the universe. Your conscious mind, as you go to sleep, is capable of impressing your great I Am upon your subconscious mind, which is a sliver of the one all-creating subconscious mind. This one mind never sleeps because it is infinite and therefore everywhere and in everything, and it is always in the process of creating and manifesting. Throughout those hours while your conscious mind is resting, your subconscious mind is receiving and processing all that you've downloaded into it and getting ready to turn its impressions into form and circumstance. In his book, The Biology of Belief, my good friend Bruce Lipton puts this phenomenon of the conscious and subconscious mind into the language of modern technology using this metaphor. Quote, in reality, the subconscious is an emotionless database of stored programs whose function is strictly concerned with reading environmental signals and engaging in hardwired behavioral programs, no questions asked, no judgments made. The subconscious mind is a programmable hard drive into which our life experiences are downloaded. Unquote. So here you are lying in your bed about to enter into your unconscious state where your subconscious mind is most at home. In Bruce Lipton's analogy, there's a computer ready and waiting to get to work as soon as you doze off and leave your conscious mind behind. As you lie there, what you say to yourself as an I am is what you download into the computer. The computer I'm using to stand in for the one universal subconscious mind is so vast that it has no beginning and no end, and everything exists within it. If everything exists within it, and it is infinite, that means you exist within it as well, and it must respond to what you load into it. It cannot sleep. It's too busy turning conscious impressions into form and circumstance. All you have to do is understand this power is within you and be in a state of gratitude for your highest self, which is God. Remember those three magic words. You are God. There is only one subconscious mind, and your own subconscious mind is a part of that one mind. That invisible part of you is really the mind of God at work, as long as you don't edge God out. That's ego, which is what your conscious mind has probably been trained to do. If your subconscious mind receives your conviction that you have money, you will have money. If it receives the conviction that I am happy, I am healthy, I am content, I am love, I am wise, or any other statement downloaded with conviction, the subconscious mind will bring it into your physical reality. I am not suggesting that you have hope or tell yourself maybe or use the last 5 minutes awake to say, I will be happy, I will be prosperous, I hope to one day be content. Use the name that God gave to Moses as he described who he is. I am that. I am. This is where faith plays a decisive role. You must extinguish any thought that being one with God is impossible. That is the false self at work. The contaminated personal subconscious that receives toxic self-limiting ideas and turns them into your unfulfilled reality. You are one with the one universal subconscious mind of God that never sleeps and works for you while your conscious mind slumbers. You want it to work for you, using what you downloaded into it, even as you are in deep sleep. While you sleep, your subconscious mind works. One of my spiritual teachers, Omram Mikhail Ivanov, the Bulgarian mystic philosopher and one of the founders of the Universal White Brotherhood, has this to say about your preparation for sleep and what transpires while you sleep. Quote, "It is the experiences of the last minutes before you go to sleep that are more important, more significant than anything that happened during the day." Unquote. He speaks eloquently on the importance of entering the subconscious mind with a purity of spirit, because each night we die, and if we don't know how to prepare for our nightly death, we will be prepared for our true departure to the other world. Quote, "Take care, therefore," he urges us, "never to go to sleep with negative thoughts in your mind, for they will destroy all the good you may have gained during the day." Unquote. Your time while asleep, when you leave this house and yet are still attached to it, is to be thought of as a sacred journey that you take daily to connect to the one universal subconscious mind and experience the bewildering wonder of what transpires there. Once again, Ivanov tells us, quote, "Before going to sleep, you must get ready as though for a sacred pilgrimage. Never go to bed with a negative thought in your head, for it will wreak havoc in your subconscious." Unquote. In those 8 or so hours that you are embedded in your subconscious mind, you receive instruction. The feelings you brought to your sleep time will be expressed tomorrow and in all of your tomorrows. This is a time when you leave behind the constrictions of your physical world and the limitations of your physical body. You allow the one subconscious mind to create your wishes without active participation from your solid material self. I cannot describe to you precisely how your subconscious mind works while you sleep, nor can anyone give you this kind of detail. As Neville puts it so succinctly, quote, "The subconscious receives impressions only through the feelings of man, and in a way known only to itself, gives these impressions form and expression." Unquote. Who can describe the intricacies of a caterpillar weaving its own chrysalis and then emerging as a beautiful butterfly? It is a mystery known only to the one mind, as is how a subconscious impression turns into a hardened fact. But you can be cognizant of the many mysterious things you do while asleep, all the while believing them to be true and experiencing them in your body, even though you are unconscious. I only ask you to enjoy the mysterious and know that it is full of potential. Wallow in it, and when you do, you open yourself up to infinite possibilities.